Yes, it may be difficult to envision today, but believe it or not, there was a time where Mercedes was not so, shall we say, too close for comfort to the likes of Honda, especially in very critical areas like architecture, output figures, and most importantly, dollars and cents. So in a world where fancy wants to cozy up to not so fancy, especially when not so fancy is moving in an upward direction, how do they differentiate themselves? Now, a surefire way to differentiate oneself from the unwashed mass car manufacturers would be with more power, and that is never a bad thing. In this case, they pilfer the same engine from the 8 you and I have already driven, a 2-liter, 4-cylinder, gas direct-injected turbocharged engine. And what they do is they ship it off to the folks at AMG. And no, it's not an AMG engine. It's not made of frankincense and myrrh by hand. Instead, they breathe on it. So it changes the output. So think of this as like a tuner engine. And it does change the figures pretty dramatically, 302 horsepower and 295 pound-feet of torque. But something they changed to manage the extra torque in particular, this is only on offer as all-wheel drive. Now that does have a slight impact on the fuel economy, but it's still respectable, 22, 29, 25 combined. And then in terms of performance figures, that's where we see a pretty sizable change, 0 to 60, 4.6 seconds, and VMAX 155 miles an hour. As of late, I feel like you and I are on a roll with all these lightweight Germans, 3,525 pounds, or depending on express your weights and measures, 1,599 kilograms, with that Sport Plus mode. A little bit of a delay there, but then about 3,000 RPM. Man, does she completely wake up to about 6,000 RPM. This is quite a difference from that A we drove, January of 2020. Right before my accident, and it was good, but not quite this. As this is something significantly different with this engine. I would argue this is what the package needs, especially with that dual clutch, because the way it delivers power, it's kind of peaky at points, and the dual clutch has a unique mechanical personality to it, where you have a good amount of control over shifting the gears. It's rare that it denies shifts, which is one of the reasons I like this transmission in these front-wheel drive base Mercedes. And here in canyon roads, or I would argue driving more aggressively in town, this is a better transmission to have in a smaller car like this. That brings us to driving dynamics, and that's something that's a bit unusual with this car, especially when you consider it is a front-wheel drive biased vehicle, even with that all-wheel drive system there. Yes, it can send up to 50% of the torque to the rear wheels. However, in this application, it does so on more occasions than in that A application we drove about a year and a half ago. And that's because of a tuning from AMG to not only the throttle mapping, but also the all-wheel drive system. And I would argue they did this not just to get torque back there. It doesn't really change it into a rear-wheel drive car. You still feel the front-wheel drive bias, but what it does, it makes it a bit more in tune with the peaky engine. You see, this is not a luxury car. It's not trying to be a luxury car, and it's not trying to be a hardcore like AMG or M car. However, it's really a good sweet spot, even with the peaky engine, because there's a way in which there's an on-off switch to this engine, and that's because of the big turbocharger, and that's why you need the all-wheel drive system to enable the wheels to hook up with the road and actually produce results, rather than just spinning tires and burning the rubber like we did in that Hyundai Sonata N-Line and that Kia K5. That brings us to other driving dynamics bits and kind of a recap there. It's the same as the other A Class, and that would mean McPherson's in the front, multi-link in the rear. The brakes here, not really a full-fat AMG, 13.8-inch diameter rotors in the front, 12.9 in the back. And here they do a respectable job of keeping up with the kind of driving you and I are doing today. My guess is you'd get some fade after probably a couple of hours in the canyons with these brakes. There is good control over all planes of motion. I would say, if anything, you do feel the shorter wheelbase of this vehicle, which for the avoidance of doubt is about an inch longer than a Civic or a Corolla, but 4 inches shorter than, say, an Accord or a Camry. So this is not really a replacement to a D-segment family car. It's much smaller, and as such, the ride quality is a bit more choppy. I'm not complaining about it. I kind of like the way the ride quality works here, but it's a bit more stiff. than I'd say all of those choices. And that sort of brings us to the wheels. You see fitted as standard are the 18s. However, the car you and I are driving, the very fancy AMG 19-inch wheels. And yes, they do have an impact on the ride quality. Am I complaining? No. But then again, I am not the pinnacle of practicality. I literally think a Lotus is something you could take to Costco, as I did for many years. So if one needs to put Rugrats in the back or in-laws, they're going to complain about the ride quality, even though you are probably going to like it a lot. Yes, it is indeed that time again to play your favorite game behind the options game with today's contestant, something I would classify as a very pretty Mercedes. This one, the 2021 Mercedes AMG A35 4MATIC for a base price of $45,850. Now, one of the main reasons why this car is pretty is not so much the design, rather that color. Denim blue metallic. Is it as stunning as brilliant blue Magno? No, but considering the car this is, it works incredibly well and well worth $720. And with the two-tone interior, the light and the dark interior really works well with this color. To that, we add the 19-inch twin-spoke AMG wheels for $500. Then we press on to an option that always angers me in these near AMGs or whatever we're supposed to call them. The AMG drive unit on the steering wheel is optional on a car that says AMG all over it. $400. Can we fix this? Then we press on to the AMG Ride Control Sport Suspension. This makes a rather sizable difference, as we have learned today, $990. Then Sirius XM radio is optional on an almost $46,000 car, $400. Heated front seats, $500. Then a bargain, the USB-C cable adapter, $25. The multimedia package, this is very cool. This is the augmented reality for the navigation system and the navigation system, $1,295. Then, considering this is a sort of fancy car, we've got to have the premium package, which includes such illustrious items as the keyless entry, optional on an almost $46,000 car, folding mirrors, as well as an auto dim mirror, $800. Then the only other thing we have to add is the destination and handling von Rastatt, Deutschland for $1,050 for a total retail price of $52,990. You and we need to strategize a bit. I have never been a big fan of Mercedes, BMW, Audi, those kind of car manufacturers. I would even rope Bentley into it, going down market, meaning chasing volume. And that's really what this car is. Maybe they can get away with it in Europe, but in the US, I would argue it's still very much a premium luxury brand. So I was never a big fan of like CLAs, or in this case, A250s. However, this is a significantly more cohesive package. All the bits, and it's really small changes they've made here, make it a more usable package, but I would argue it's a more premium package. It's not really an AMG. It's more of a premium car that's actually being premium because it has good power, although, man, those nannies, you do not have a very long leash. It's kind of a short leash with this thing. I've noticed that throughout my entire afternoon here in the canyons. Anyway, I digress. Which brings us to the point that I need to get across here. And this, I'm going to disappoint some folks that are watching this. I don't think it's going to be drivers. I think it's going to be folks in Stuttgart. I feel this should be the most basic A class, whether it's a CLA or an A in the Mercedes lineup. And that's because it is a more cohesive package, because these things, I mean Mercedes or AMG, whatever you want to call them, there's something you aspire to. I don't think they should be competing with Honda Civics, and not just in size, but in terms of mission. And here, this is not really a Honda Civic. This is something that can do a bit more. Yeah, a Civic Type R is close to this, both in price and in execution. However, this with the all-wheel drive system, and frankly, it being a Mercedes and some of the experience you get in terms of ownership, it does set it apart. And I'm gonna go a step further here. By making this the entry-level car, they could make it more attainable. I know I'm kind of contradicting myself, but it would bring the base price of the vehicle down if this is the one they're amortizing the costs on. So overall, I'm saying here, don't chase volume. go back to being Mercedes. This is not just for Mercedes, frankly. This is for Audi, this is for BMW, this is for Bentley, this is for everybody. But this is the one where it's right on the front line in the most difficult segment. I guess in a way I'm starting to sound like Jerry Maguire. Less clients, better service. And with that, the only remaining business you and I have today is the wish list, which we kind of already covered, but for the avoidance of doubt, I'll say it again, this should indeed be the entry-level A-Class in the US. And yes, for all the reasons we discussed, but most importantly, the differentiation between the not-so-fancy we talked about at the beginning of the episode. But while we're on this fancy version, let's talk about one change that I think would add to that differentiation, and that is putting more torque to the rear wheels, maybe continue to fool with the tuning of that all-wheel drive system. And this would just help with the differentiation, but most importantly, there's a lot of things out there that you and I have driven and have been in that very spot in this hangar that's really too close for comfort, and sending more torque to the rear wheels, meaning make it more of a performance-oriented vehicle, would sort that out considerably. And this is the point of the episode where I turn this around to you guys to opine in the comments below, or via our social media, MotoManTV all one word, MotoManTV all one word, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. And with that, I had a chat with Kumo, and he and I both agree, this is an open letter to the folks at Mercedes Benz, we would gladly welcome many more vehicles in this denim blue metallic. Until I see you in the next episode, bis später.